To talk about Bitcoin, in simple words, I would define it as it's the world's first open source, decentralized virtual currency and payment network. That is the simplest definition I've actually seen so far. So it's open source because the source code of how it's designed to work, the programmers can read it and understand. And it is decentralized because the ledger through which these transactions happen, it's kind of distributed across hundreds of thousands of computers. So that makes sure that the transactions are happening are very safely preserved, and it is not prone to the failure of a set of computers or a computers in a city or anything like that. And because there is no centralized authority in between, so like sensor proof, so which means there is no one who can say that, okay, this transaction should go through or this transaction should not go through and such. If you hold it, you hold it, and everything works on pure mathematics.
Hello everyone, Ashok here. Thank you for tuning in to this 29th episode of Indian Startup Stories, a podcast thriving to bring out experiences and insights from entrepreneurs across India. Today, our guest is Sathvik Vishwanathan, co-founder and CEO of Unocoin, India's leading crypto assets trading and blockchain company, serving more than 1.3 million customers in their crypto exchange since 2013. In this episode, Sathvik shares his background, his passion towards entrepreneurship since the college days, creation of own domain and servers way before Gmail days, interesting topics like what is Bitcoin and why it is valued so highly being decentralized currency, how different it is from the centralized payment and settlement systems across globe, and much more valuable information for you to take away. And yes, don't miss out the joining offer Sathvik has when you start using Unocoin for buying cryptocurrencies. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hi Sathvik, it's so wonderful having you on this show. Thank you for coming on Indian Startup Stories today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok. Nice meeting you.
Wonderful. Sathvik, Unocoin is now serving more than 1.3 million customers, crossed many milestones. I'm excited to get into details more. Let's start with a little bit a background about yourself. Please share about your academics and initial career days.
Okay, I am a engineer, electronics and communication engineer from Siddhganga Institute of Technology. So after completing that in 2005, then I got into a MNC called Cognizant Technologies. So there I worked for about 2 years. After that, I went to Melbourne for doing my Master of Business Information Technology, which is like similar to MBA in IT. So there I took about a year and a half, and after that only I started Venture Next, so which was into providing custom scripting services in a virtual world called Second Life. So I mean, there has been a connection between all these like 3-4 different things. So when I was doing engineering, so my obvious first choice was to join an MNC to learn about how the things at a corporate level work. Okay, so that gave me as a very good brain booster than just the work experience. Because when I was in engineering itself, I was kind of an entrepreneur where I was selling mobile phones, and I was providing the domains and email IDs, etc. So I used to go to my own cousin's internet center. Okay, so it was just at the back gate of the engineering college. So whenever I used to go there, I could learn more about the internet. So whatever I'm talking about is between the year 2000 and 2003. Okay. So at that time, the internet was not obviously widely popular, and people used to go to the internet cafes where they used to charge about 25 rupees or 30 rupees per hour. Okay.
True.
So I became friends with a lot of people who regularly come to the internet cafe. And then, so I had my own web server set up at that point of time. So there was a portal. I mean, even now it exists, I think. So eBay, it's a e-commerce portal where we can purchase services or products from another vendor directly. So I used to have a vendor who used to provide me a server space, and that I was using to develop websites, whoever are the visitors there. And I used to get some orders for different call centers to create websites for them and to create the email IDs and such things. So whenever if someone asks me, right, so what is your email ID? I used to say that, yeah, it is sathvikv@sathvikv.com. So then at that time,
Okay.
even Gmail was not there. So it's only Yahoo, and then we had Reddit, and we have Hotmail, right? So then I had to explain them how to create uh,
Okay.
their own domain without linking it with another email provider like Yahoo or Hotmail. So for all of these, say if I'm getting a 5 GB package from my vendor, I used to sell it in the chunks of 5 MB, 10 MB each for different email
Okay.
space and web space and such things, right? So these things has already pushed me to some extent of how to actually do the business and acquire customers and such things. And when I was looking at, okay, so what will be my next goal, so how I want to design my career and such things, my obvious choice was, if I have to continue in IT field, then I definitely should have some exposure and experience of how the corporates work, right? So, and I was lucky enough to get selected for Cognizant Technologies. So that was a very fruitful journey as well. So where I learned on one side, the half of the time I spent there, I was a developer, and next half of the time, I was a quality analyst. So I was able to get the grasp of how the things at a corporate level works, and then I moved on to doing my master's. So that was eventually I mean, while I was in Cognizant, say about halfway through, I made up my mind that if not now, then I may not be able to do my master's in the future, right? So then I
Okay.
started working for that, and it took me about 6 months or so to get the admission, and then I moved on to Melbourne. So going to Melbourne actually was my first time getting into a flight to go out of the country. So it was at one shot, the first time I'm leaving the country, I'm leaving it for 2 years.
Long duration.
Yeah, very very long duration, and it was quite blindly taking that call and going forward and settling there to figure out all the things, right? So it was definitely an amazing experience. It's kind of you're getting into a jungle alone. You just don't know how what exists around, so you have to slowly figure out. You know you are safe, but it is still a lot of unknowns are there.
Yeah.
So, and it could be at the culture level, it could be at the academics level. It was way too different. Okay. So then there was one subject in my master's called managing information societies. Okay, so MIS. So in one of the seminars, one of my own friends introduced a virtual world called Second Life to people there,
Okay.
right? So it is like a 3D environment. When people log in, they will see themselves like an avatar. And
A
if you
gaming, like a gaming
kind
kind
of
of a
3D
game.
gaming, yeah, yeah. See, it's not really a game. I would say it is more like a simulator, because what you want to create there is just up to you. It's like you can create a building
Oh.
if you want. You can create a animation if you want. It could be textures. It could be anything. So what we do there, how we create our own life, is just up to us. But you have the opportunity to do anything you want, and every person you meet there is a real human behind it, right? So you
Okay.
can chat, you can voice with them, you can do business together. So there is lot of say free hand exists in this particular virtual world, and there are so many businesses that also exist which are making millions of dollars even today. So because I was a techie by myself, I started offering custom scripting services. Okay,
Okay.
so what I mean by that is, so let's say if someone is constructing a 3D home, then I used to create a automation script for them. And if someone is creating a game, then I used to make the game work. So we can assume it like how the Flash animations used to exist, where there are different moving pieces in a Flash animation. and there are scripts behind it which will make those animations to work. So it's something similar, right? And
Okay.
after that, after the end of my masters, then again, I on one side I was looking at the opportunities, if there are very suitable opportunities I could get for my caliber. On the other side, I continue providing my custom scripting services in Second Life, and this was all in the year like 2008. So that was also the time when recession has badly hit the world, etc.
Yeah.
So I figured out that maybe I should make this hobby or this side business itself as the main business. And then I hired about half a dozen scripters to start providing the custom scripting services itself, and that then the story continues from there.
Okay, that's a rich experience actually to begin with. So before jumping into your company details, right? Let's start with the basic question. What is cryptocurrency? And also if you can elaborate a little bit on the three generations of cryptocurrency starting from Bitcoin, later Ethereum and so on.
Okay, so I was talking about the when my experience with Venture Next, where I was doing custom string services, right? So the way we earn money in it is through a closed loop currency called Linden dollars. So about 250 Linden dollars is $1. I mean, $1 American. And the way I could get that money to India was through PayPal. So who used to charge about 3.9% as a transaction fees, and then another 3% as a conversion fees to convert the remaining USD to INR. So I was losing like 7% of the money, and that happened for about 3.54 years.
Okay.
And that added up quite a bit. It's quite a bit of money to lose every month, like 7% of it, right? So then I was looking at what are the better alternatives that exist to do the transaction in money, because I'm a techie myself as well. I could very clearly see at the end it is mostly about database changes that's happening from one company to one company, and the money is really getting siphoned away. And even though the work that happens behind the scenes to do that particular transaction is constant, from whether it being $100 or whether it being $100,000. So all of these are getting measured as terms of percentage, which was a obviously very steep expense for the business. So that is when I figured out that there is an alternative like Bitcoin. Okay, so to talk about Bitcoin, I would, in simple words, I would define it as it's the world's first open source, decentralized virtual currency and payment network. Okay, so that is the simplest definition I've actually seen so far. So it's open source because the source code of how it's designed to work, the programmers can read it and understand. And it is decentralized because the ledger through which these transactions happen, it's kind of distributed across hundreds of thousands of computers. So that makes sure that the transactions are happening are very safely preserved, and it is not prone to the failure of a set of computers or a computers in a city or anything like that. And because there is no or there is no centralized authority in between, it's like sensor proof. So which means there is no one who can say that okay, this transaction should go through or this transaction should not go through and such. If you hold it, you hold it, and everything works on pure mathematics. So that's definitely the exciting part of the Bitcoin as compared to what we have seen till then. Okay, so this becomes like how open source and decentralized, and it is actually two things in one. It's both a kind of currency or an asset, and also the network or the rails to move that particular asset. So what do I mean by that is, so we can say it could be rupees or dollars or gold. So these are all like something which is valuable. Okay, that can be used for transactions. And then there are different mechanisms to move this money. So if it comes to say rupees or dollar, then we use in India we use NEFT, IMPS, UPI, or if it is international we use something called Swift, right? So when it comes to Bitcoin, it actually, two things in one. It's both. Uh, it's a representation of a value, and it's also a mechanism to move that particular value. So, like if you can take examples of Visa, MasterCard. So those are also the rails to move. They are not the currency by
Right.
themselves. So when it comes to Bitcoin, when both things are combined, and both are actually called Bitcoins. That is one of the reasons why a lot of people get confused. So it's both a virtual currency and a payment network to move that particular currency. So now the interesting thing that we will have to see here is, okay, there is a software built, there is a protocol built. Technically, it could be whatever, but what is that it eventually brought to the table, right? So, what is that revolutionary thing that can or that had the potential to make something like Bitcoin successful? Okay,
Okay.
so we will have to see the examples, like how, so the post office was comparatively inefficient if we see the communication methods that exist today, right? So then if someone need to write a letter to someone, then it's like a very long procedure of writing it and posting it into a post box, and then a postman picking it up, getting it to sorting center, then that getting moved to another city, so wherever it should eventually go, and then another postman picking it up and finally delivering it to the destination. So this particular method of communication involved both the time and the money. Okay. So the moment we have something like internet, where everyone is kind of getting connected, interconnected among people, then there is a mechanism or the protocol that we could build on top of it to just move that messages from one person to one person in like split second, at zero cost. And then there are even mechanisms to know whether it is the messages is delivered or not, right? So that happened because people are getting interconnected through their mobile phones or through their laptop, personal computers, etc. So on the other side, we also understand that for the movement of the money, right? So at the digital level, it could be the regulators or it could be the service providers are still using internet. When I'm talking about 2009, 10, so people are still using, are already using internet. So we saw NEFT and RTGS. So again, how that works is through internet interconnected computers and a network, and then the bank servers. So everything plugged with one another, and the information is flowing, and eventually everyone is doing the required validations and recording of the transactions, so that the new balances gets updated for the users, and that the transactions can happen. So then we had this internet banking, so which is one of the revolutionary things again. So where customers themselves could initiate the transactions by just logging in and approving the transactions. So at the end, money was already moving as a part of information. Okay, so it's not that money had to be physical anymore, and that is true with actually the entire world. It's not only like in India or developed countries. So now comes the phase where like how, say, email became just a peer-to-peer thing, more or less. So at the protocol level, no one can stop you from sending an email to someone, right? And the email is not centralized in nature. There are service providers which are centralized, like Gmail or Yahoo, but email at the protocol level is not centralized. It just works with the interconnected computers. So that's pretty much it, right? So how the transaction or how the information flow is happening through the email, and there was less and less need for a mechanism like the post office. So similarly, we started seeing that trend, so where financial transactions are happening more and more online, and the real need for the money to, I mean, for physical transactions are becoming less mandatory. So
Mhm.
there, based upon all these concepts, I think the Bitcoin got introduced. Okay, so it can work in a decentralized manner. There is no need for someone to actually sit in between to govern the transactions. And then because it's happening purely on the internet, it's instantaneous, and it's almost free of cost. Okay, so the moment this came into existence, obviously people would not realize, or did not realize, its long-term potential. But however, we are in the like 12th year or 13th year since the introduction of Bitcoin, and
Mhm.
the value appreciation itself talks about how successful this simple and amazing idea has been, where moving the money in a sensor resistant manner instantaneously at almost zero cost is a very, very valuable thing for the world today, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
that's what Bitcoin brought to the table, and that's how it has become quite successful so far. Okay, so when it comes to Bitcoin, it was just, let's say, it's only about transactions, happening where one person sends and one person receives it. So more or less, that's the end of it. Okay, but then came the era of Ethereum, so which is another blockchain,
Mhm.
so where people could start writing something called smart contracts. So where they could, so say for example, right? So what are the different things banks do? It's not only incoming and outgoing transactions, but there are many other contractual agreements that the banks would enter with the lenders or the borrowers. It could just be as simple as a fixed deposit bond, or it could be a loan given for a business, etc. So where a lot of times it's just not transaction; it's also about agreements or contractual agreements. So that thing was not successfully achieved by Bitcoin. So Bitcoin more concentrated as doing the transaction, and also to some extent as a store of value. So store
Yeah,
of
it's also
value.
heavy, right? With yeah, it's also heavy, right, with the value of the scarcity in picture.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's about the features of like how the money should be should be in place.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was definitely I mean, some of the missing pieces definitely existed when it comes to the Bitcoin, and that's what gave rise to Ethereum. So where
Mhm.
customers or people could write some kind of contracts in simple programming languages, and then deploy it on something called blockchain, so which can be read by anyone, and it's an immutable ledger actually. So once that is there, then everyone would obviously believe it, because people can read the code, what exactly is written. So like how we would read a particular contract on a paper and sign it. The code is just there in front of you. You can read it and validate it, and then be a part of it. It's just as simple as that.
Mhm.
So then, obviously, the moment contractual agreements can be created on the blockchain, then various other services that the banks are trying to provide, or banks provide today, can be brought over to this new financial, internet financial system, right? It
Mhm.
could be, say, if you need to create a transaction that where there is a definitive timeline to do the something like EMI payments, right? Or it could be that, okay, you're depositing so much money for this particular purpose, and then how it will be refunded back to you with the interest and such things. And when it comes to banks, so we trust the banks, we trust the signature done by the bank manager, and we go ahead with the transaction. But when it comes to something like absolutely decentralized, you
Mhm.
cannot trust a person, you cannot trust an entity, because who exists today may not even exist, say, tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
they might not even turn on their computer. So you cannot trust an individual or an entity. You just have to trust the code, and you should
Mhm.
believe that, or there should be enough proof to believe that the code will be immutable, and it will execute, or it will work the way it is. So once the contract is done, then the contract will just work the way it is programmed, whether the deployer of the contract even exists or not. So that's how these blockchains are designed. So that gave a new perspective for the people to look at. So the the other parts of the banking sector business, to be specific, right? So today even there are insurance. So there are companies building insurance contracts on top of blockchain. Then I talked
True.
about the lending and borrowing, right? And all of
True.
this, this happen. The best thing is this happens in a decentralized way. So the way it is written, it just works, whether the person who deployed it even like exists tomorrow or not. So you don't need to
Got it.
depend
Yeah.
upon, yeah. So that is
Nice.
the proposition that Ethereum, on that I mean Ethereum along with few other similar blockchains brought to the table. And few things that the Ethereum also did bring is saying that the tokenization of something. Okay, so where the companies or some kind of service provider can tokenize their own services, or it could be, say, a company where they create their security or the shares or equity through these kinds of smart contracts and have it being traded from one investor to another investor. So these things also became possible because at the end, even those are some kind of agreements uh, that gets on the blockchain. So in that way, we have seen a lot of tokens, a lot of service providers coming up saying that, okay, we provide these XYZ services. And initially, the startups used to raise money from investors, accredited investors or some VC funds and such things, for creating those kinds of projects. But this gave an opportunity for comparatively a common man who understands something of this particular fashion. So where there is a contract, no one is no one is signing it with the ink, but it is just a part of the program. And then there is a team, then there is a roadmap, then depending upon the community they are building, depending upon the founders and developers, etc., people starting trusting and buying these kinds of tokens, so which was created by that company. And today we have more or less about 3,000 such tokens that have got created. 3,000 different
Okay.
tokens from different companies that has got created, that gets traded. So it's I mean, most of them are not really securities. It's just about the utility token. So it's more similar to saying, there is a milkman, and at the start of the month, the moment you pay like 1,000 rupees, then he will give you 30 tokens, saying, okay, these are the 30 tokens, and every token is worth about 1 liter of milk. And every day he just gives the milk. He just collects one of the token.
Okay.
No, so it's just like utility token. It's not security or anything like that, right?
Okay.
So, and then we start seeing about what if that one token can not only bring exactly 1 liter of milk, but maybe 1.1 liter of milk, because those tokens started becoming more valuable because there is demand for that particular milkman who is servicing people, because he is keeping up with his word. The way he is designed his business is really going good, etc., right? So it's like any other startup. So where if they're able to deliver their promises or go beyond that, then there is a huge, humongous, value that gets added to this big token, and that will give it some kind of speculative aspect of that particular business or the utility as well. So that more or less became the third generation part of the cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
But as of
Like
today,
a
all of
dApps.
all of that combined is cryptocurrency. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now we are moving towards more of the application side of it, right? The decentralized applications. Nice. That's an interesting and a good aggregation of knowledge when it comes to the Bitcoin and the blockchain platform. Moving on with the actual company, what is Unocoin, and who are your customers? What are the services that you're making?
So I was talking about how we used to get charged about 7% of the money for transaction fees and conversion fees, and that made me look at different aspects of different options that exist when we need to move the money from one place to one place without losing a big portion of it for fees and
Mhm.
conversion. So that made me stumble upon Bitcoin, and I was looking at what exactly is happening in Bitcoin space in India. So then there was a meetup that was getting organized in that same weekend in Bangalore MG Road. So when I went there, that's where I actually met my present co-founder Sunny Ray. So he
Mhm.
was a electrical engineer from University of Toronto, and he was in India to build the Indian market for the robotics company he was working for. And while in Canada, Bitcoin was a comparatively popular concept already. But
Mhm.
however, he could not find anyone to talk to about this new thing in India. So he created a meetup, hoping that there will be some people who will turn up there, and where there can be some kind of discussion or community building that will eventually happen. And when I went there, yeah, he was the organizer of the meetup. So there was actually people who were interested in a crazy concept like this, where everything is just digital form and there is money behind it, and even though there is no real money, so
Mhm.
it was a very different experience at that point of time for people to trust something or trust an asset class which they have never even heard of. Okay, so where people are
Mhm.
putting their savings, so and they don't know the exact path that this could take. Uh, but however, that's a new crazy thing, and people had some craze, for it at the point of time.
Yeah, I don't know about what is the
So
actual value financially when
yeah,
the
see, at
when the
that
actual
time it
returns.
was, yeah. So 2013, that was when what I'm talking about. It's more happening in 2012 and 13. So
Mhm.
2013 is one of the very interesting year for Bitcoin. So where the price went up from about $16 on January 1st, and it went up to 1,050 by December 18th or so. So
Mhm.
it went up by, say, 70
100
times, or
to
yeah,
yeah,
the crazy amount
almost.
of a crazy multiplier that it has seen. And the way the price of Bitcoin increased, and we actually started seeing more and more and more people coming for that particular meetup. And
Mhm.
some of the meetups which was supposed to be like maybe for 10 or 15 people ended up gathering about 100 people. It was like a mini conference, and we were just booking some a random posh hotel, and just going there and having the discussions, and people used to pay for their own food, and it is just a place
Mhm.
where people could just come and talk about a common topic. It was
Okay.
as simple. Yeah, it was a free for anyone to attend, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So more and more people started coming there, and people are looking at, yeah, this looks to be like the thing of the next generation and such things. But there was no way for Indians yet to buy Bitcoin. I mean, you could learn everything about how it works and what it is trying to disrupt and such things, but there was no place.
Mhm.
So then eventually what happened later in that year was people started bringing some cash in their pocket, a duffel bag, and hoping that someone else who has come for the meetup has some Bitcoin to sell.
Okay.
That was like the very bad way of doing the transactions, and that's what made me and
Mhm.
Sunny and two others to think that this is not the way the transaction should be happening.
Mm.
And then maybe it's time for India to have a platform like Coinbase. The Coinbase
Okay.
existed in US already. Then
Mhm.
Europe had Bitstamp, and Japan had Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
So like that, the India did not have any kind of option.
Mhm.
So that's what made us to think that we should put together a platform similar and make the transactions happen smoothly. So people should be able to buy it without having the stress on whether they are getting cheated, or will the transaction really happens, because sometimes it used to be, it could be bigger transactions, right? So it not always be at like 5,000 or 10,000 rupees.
Yeah.
So there is, and then those transactions are supposed to happen through transfers of bank accounts, so that there is a trial of funds moving, and there is a trial of transactions happening on the blockchain as well is can be authenticated in the future if not. Okay, so those things made us to think that okay, we put together a platform. And at that time Sunny had this domain called unocoin.com, where he was displaying some aggregation of news articles around the world. Okay, so
Okay.
Sunny's wife was Spanish, and that's what made him to pick up this particular domain name. So Unocoin,
Okay.
and Uno means one, so it's like it's a very catchy name. I mean,
Okay.
people usually know because of the game like called Uno, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they'll see that okay, it's like about one. So that then he gave me the domain, saying that okay, let's build this into a platform XYZ. Then because I had that bunch of scripters with me because I was servicing the Second Life customers, I
Mm-hmm.
pulled together about three of them, explained the concepts. So it took about 2 months or so, 2.5 months to create the basic structure of Unocoin, and then we launched it to Indian customers through a conference called the Global Bitcoin Conference.
Okay.
So yeah, initially it was only like the buy and sell of Bitcoin, absolutely nothing else. But then, yeah, there are a lot of other services which we have built around it called systematic buying plan, which is more similar to SIP of mutual funds. And there were merchant services helping merchants to accept Bitcoin as a mode of payment. And there was utilities that people could pay for, like the mobile phone, say prepaid and postpaid and DTH connections and such things. So like this, depending upon the pain points of our own customers and the feedback that we used to get from them, we
Mm-hmm.
kept developing new things to solve that particular pain point. And this is already our eighth year of operation. So
That's
servicing
wonderful.
about servicing about
Yeah.
1.3 million and our customers with the
Right. So
team strength
how
of about
this
40.
is actually a huge customer list that you have, and how are you seeing the trend in terms of customer adoption? There are a lot of speculations around. So how do you see that trend coming?
See, it definitely. I don't think we have gathered the core people, so who are
Mm-hmm.
into hardcore, trading, because a lot of them. I mean, one of the biggest issues when it comes to crypto industry in India is regulation, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not only about regulations; it's also about categorization. So if you hold Bitcoin, to what extent it's valid, and then when you're doing the transactions, how it should be shown to the taxman, and how it should be treated, as whether it's a currency, whether it's an asset, does it come under some kind of is it more like transacting with dollars, because it can cross border without any restrictions and such things.
Mm-hmm.
And then if something goes wrong, whether is there a legal recourse that can be adopted by the victim. So there is so much of unknown things that exist today, and that is what makes the bigger transactions or serious people to not get into this yet, because they obviously look for a uh, comparatively regulated market. It could be, say, mutual funds or insurance or equity, commodities, and forex. So there are so many regulated markets which exist in India already
Mm-hmm.
for this kind, where there's the speculative aspect for it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though speculative aspect exists for cryptocurrencies in a way that don't exist for rest of it, because it's like very highly speculative.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of people who don't want to get. So this was a kind of situation, say, till 2015, 16, and even today, I think there are people who are waiting for regulations eventually to
Okay.
get in.
So,
But
so
the
I'm
different,
I'm curious on that specifically that government regulations, right? It's like putting a template of a regulation into an area of where there is no regulation because it's all decentralized, right? How challenging is it to actually convince people that these are two different aspects of it? Because you are working in area where system is considered as the trust, right? It's all decentralized and there is no one government authority or any governing body sitting and regulating all these things. So will these two templates fit each other? Is
yeah,
there
it
any way?
definitely will. Yeah, it definitely will. See,
Mm-hmm.
there is some part of the law of the land. Okay, so that
Mm-hmm.
should be obeyed no matter if it is Bitcoin or you name it, whatever. Okay, so that cannot be bypassed because you create a method to bypass it.
Okay.
But creating a method to bypass it and intentionally bypassing it actually will be the violation of the regulation itself. See, for example, say gold today. It is also in
Mm-hmm.
a way very decentralized in manner, but still the regulations exist in India of how the transactions is supposed to happen. Okay, you need to pay X amount of GST for it. Then this is the kind of categorization, and people would show that as XYZ on their balance sheets. So those,
Mm-hmm.
that exists. Some mechanism exists. It is not as transparent and straightforward as say doing transactions in the bank account itself. Okay, so when the
Mm-hmm.
transaction is happening in the bank account, it is 100% transparent to the government or taxman. Okay, so it's not,
True.
I mean, that extent is not possible when it comes to say something physical in nature. But
Mm-hmm.
however, there are regulations that the government and the regulators have come up saying that okay, these things has to be followed. So they should not do the cash transaction for more than 50,000 rupees. If it is between 50,000 to 2 lakhs, then it has to be through. I mean, there is a compulsory PAN card needs to be collected from the customer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there is, and you should know your customers like KYC, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there is different things that a business who is doing could be a simple like something like gold would follow. Okay, so because it's decentralized does not mean it's just up to the air and anything, whether it's right or wrong, is
Mm-hmm.
undetermined. It's not so. So when it comes to the cryptocurrencies as well, I mean, we as Indians are the country as in India, so which is one of the highly regulated countries in the world because of its own, internal reasons. So there is a need saying that okay, if there is a Bitcoin exchange, they are supposed to do these kinds of KYC documentations and make sure that all the transactions are happening through the bank accounts and how it is shown to the government, how it is shown to the taxman. So those kinds of rules and regulation can definitely be implied. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest worry for now for the government is see when it comes to the gold, the entire gold industry just cannot fail overnight, right? So because it's already existing since thousands of years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's physical in nature, so it cannot just disappear, right? And people, like when people are good at handling something physical, okay, and when it comes to the average knowledge of an Indian, and to what extent he can understand something to be like whatever it is, and such things. So there is a huge responsibility for the government the moment they look at regulating, to educate people that you should be aware of these things when it comes to cryptocurrencies and such things. And if something
Mm-hmm.
fails, then government or the regulators don't want to take the blame as of today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are not at, I mean, we're very, risk averse regulators, let's say, due to which,
Okay.
as of today, we don't have the regulators explicitly saying, okay, this is the rules in which your industry is supposed to work and such, right? But we have seen a lot of other developed countries who have come up with different rules, and some of them have been successful, some of them are not. I think eventually we as an Indians will see what has worked and what has not worked, and come up with a regulation that is more apt for a country like India. I think so. It'll
Mm-hmm.
still be like waiting and eventually seeing it happen.
That was wonderful knowing it.
Mhm.
Now, globally, NFTs are becoming so much of hype, right? The non-fungible tokens. It is at very early stage for India. How do you see NFTs are going to make big impact for Indian artists or for any talented individuals? Do you see it coming as a boom?
So it's a very new concept to start with. We have seen some, say, hype and some traction in this industry for only since like what, some 3-4 months, I guess. It exists. The idea of NFTs existed since at least few years, right? So at least since 2017, but it has only seen a huge uptick only very recently. So we'll have to see, non-fungible token in the physical form is different from non-fungible token in the digital form. Okay, so it is not like, okay, whether you have rupee or whether you have 100 rupees in your pocket is very similar to having maybe 100 rupees in Paytm, if most of them are accepting it, right? So it's not very different. But when it comes to the NFTs, you can say that you are the owner of a particular art by proving in a undisputable cryptographical way. But at the end, what you actually hold is a signature, or something like private key, to show that you are the owner. You don't have the actual physical art by yourself. That is a tricky part of it, and not for everyone it is acceptable. Right.
It's kind of a digital collectible, right?
Yeah.
Comparatively.
So it's see, for example, for me, to say that I own a particular painting, it is important that I own the painting and not just hold a certificate that I own the painting. So it's like two different things. So what NFT that we are talking about here is more about the certificate. It's a very indisputable certificate that I own the painting, and the actual painting don't even exist, because like artists sometimes even destroy that and create it as a token and giving it. It definitely, I mean, there is some trend, right? Trend for this, and there is some time where something like this could work. And eventually how that particular NFTs, the ownership certificates, gets used, or it may have some kind of value for sure that could get exchanged and such. But when it comes to the art work, especially, where I don't see a point in destroying it and creating it as a digital token and then swapping around between people for validation.
Yeah. I was actually excited when I came to know it is actually bringing value and the credibility or the authority for the creator, because irrespective of who is owning at any point of time, it always has an identity to the original creator. In the other form, it will not exist, right? Because once I buy something from the creator, and the creator actually loses all the control. Whatever the value it is gaining in future, creator doesn't have any kind of relationship whatever is happening in the future. But somehow NFT is making that gap filled, and it is creating a value for the creator actually.
Yeah. I think the more meaningful NFT should be like, you should not destroy the physical form of it. Okay. But there should also be a token created by the creator, so which is more like a certificate. So for example, I hold a painting and I also hold a certificate. I will not destroy the painting because I got certificate. So in that way, I think both should go hand in hand, and at any point of time, the owner of the painting can show that he's the actual owner, and no other in the world can actually prove that, because it's cryptographically secure and such. But I don't see point in destroying the actual art itself.
Okay, nice. Okay, we are at the end of part 1 of Unocoin episode. In this episode number 29, continuation of this interview would be the immediate next episode, which would be episode number 30. Stay tuned to hear out the continuing insights from Sathvik Vishwanathan. Please check out the episode summary in the description. Until we catch up soon with more exciting stories, stay tuned, be motivated. Thank you.